This is Sarah Cox in A Day to Be Me. We have our co-host,
Alexander Hodge.
our editor,
Kevin Gellinger.
our guest star.
Tyson?
Nope. A summary is abstract thinking is the ability to think about objects, principles, and ideas that are not physically present. It is related to symbolic thinking, which uses the substitution of a symbol for an object or idea.
Yes.
What is... Go ahead, Alex.
So I like how. Go ahead and continue. I apologize.
What is abstract thinking? A variety of everyday behaviors constitute abstract thinking. These include using metaphors and analogies, understanding relationships between verbal and nonverbal ideas, spatial reasoning, and mentally manipulating and rotating objects, complex reasoning, such as using critical thinking, the scientific method, and other approaches to reasoning through problems. Abstract thinking makes it possible for people to exercise creativity. Creativity, in turn, is a useful survival mechanism. It allows us to develop tools and new ideas that improve the quality of human life. Alex?
Yes. So a good example of this is how I recently, past year or so, I've been introduced to an abstract idea from actually our guest here, Tyson. He introduced me to this concept of like red pill, blue pill when it comes to relationships and status and how to improve ourselves as an individual based on the red pill reality or the blue pill fantasy plugged in. And I love where this concept came from because Rollo Tomasi is the guy who articulated this abstraction and he gave it a name. He gave the abstract idea a name and a definition and a purpose. Kind of like also how another example of this would be like the periodic table of elements. The person who created the periodic table of elements gave the abstraction of the elements and he gave it a structure. He gave it a structure and an organized definition. He gave it structure. He gave the abstraction. He took it from the fog and gave it a form that we can all learn about and actually get a read on.
Yeah.
Okay. What are metaphors and analogies? A metaphor is a figure of speech in which a word or phrase is applied to an object or action which is not literally applicable. Analogy, a comparison between two things, typically for the purpose of explanation or clarification. People who use metaphors and analogies tend to be in an abstract thinking pattern.
Uh-huh. And
Abstract versus... Oh, go ahead, Alex.
I was going to say, we as we get older, from versus our childhood, because children, their prefrontal cortex isn't fully developed until, what was the age, Tyson? What was it, like 25, like in 25 to 30 is when the prefrontal cortex. Yeah, like I remember personally a time where I developed the capacity for abstract thinking. I remember it finally developing and making sense as I got older on how to take abstractions and in that method of thinking and I realized where I'm at now, but I couldn't do it before. So I've seen the growth and in the ability to think abstractly.
So, another example, I think, the abstract versus concrete thinking, that could probably be tied back to our development as civilization. From the earliest primitive people, we had to, detect patterns for survival. It was literally a matter of life and death. That's when we began to understand, the seasons and the sun and the weather patterns, when certain areas would flood, all these natural phenomena. They didn't have someone to teach them all this stuff. They didn't have Wikipedia, so they had to learn it through hard knocks. And so
Yeah.
the better that they
And dying.
so all these abstract concepts like the thunderstorm, they didn't probably even have the language to articulate it, but they could begin to tell that maybe when certain clouds were indicators that rain, when this happened, almost like a dog that's being trained. They began to associate patterns, so it kind of takes that abstract concept, like a thunderstorm, something's coming, it's not here yet. And the greater people had the ability to sort of plan for the future or whatever, allowed them to save up more food, it allowed them to build better structures, it allowed them to develop sort of engineering because they did, figured out what kind of materials were better for building structures, which were more durable, and all of these things of the tribe, which all of these things required sort of a collective, or division of labor, where someone could sort of specialize in one thing, a warrior class or builders, and then they were able to carry on and teach all those skills to the next generation, which they probably would have required metaphors because what they were trying to sort of teach them wasn't rigid. It was sort of kind of word of mouth teachings, tips and tricks, almost like you'd learn sort of through almost like an apprenticeship, where, oh, when this happens, just like we have today, like righty tighty, lefty loosey, to remember which way to turn screws.
Right.
I
The
know
rule of
that.
thirds. So we have all these sort of quick concepts that came through years of trial and error, and we've distilled down to a little thing that we could use for our need, as we need it. Like, okay, righty tighty, and
Reddit
so we
was
have a
Reddit.
general sort of framework and structure for the chaos of nature. We try to tame it a little bit and provide some structure and you know make things more concrete so we can plan for the future. We're not sort of helpless. We want to conquer things and be the uh, you know captain of our own life and do
Yep,
things
and
we want to
be
do.
able to take our environment and make something of the world from it. So
Hmm.
it's an old idea. Like in mythology, it's pretty much written in mythology where they kill what was it that they face what was that story where in the Mesopotamia where he faces the
Holy
dragon?
mammoth.
No, not that. It's Tiamat. Where what was the guy's name? Marduk, where he faces the dragon of nature, was what that represents. He faces the dragon of nature and make something of the world from it. That is written in the mythology as well, and that also that passing on of word of mouth, words in the first place are our way of naming and giving structure to the abstract thing. So language in of itself is our capacity to take an abstraction and name it, and then pass it on as like word of wisdom down through generations, and then I think it also allowed us
And
to
songs too.
link link abstractions together. So when yeah,
Pretty
cause
much all the things in our life are abstract concepts. Our government, these things
money,
are ideas. All the social conventions we have, our
Cults.
culture. I mean, these are all abstract ideals, and we're always in this interaction of imposing our will. This is what and then trying to figure out what standard are we using to base all this on. What is that foundation? Is it inherent logic and beauty, or
right? That's a good question to answer. Um, on what works, what abstraction like works the best for everybody, and that's why I heard the phrase one time: "Old ideas are the best ideas because they survive for so long." So like the idea of like especially with Christianity, that's why it's become such a surviving religion and philosophy, is because it's old idea, but it works. Like it's worked for a long time. So the idea
Just
of
like Catholics.
Yeah, well, it can be subdivided into different beliefs as well. But there's all abstract. It's an abstract concept given a name and and given a structure, so we can make sense of it, make something of the world from it.
Hmm.
Alright, so next we're going to talk about disability and abstract thinking. Learning disabilities can inhibit the development of abstract reasoning skills. People with severe intellectual disabilities may never develop abstract reasoning skills and may take abstract concepts such as metaphors and analogies literally. Since abstract reasoning is closely connected to the ability to solve problems, individuals with severely inhibited abstract thinking ability may need assistance in day-to-day life.
Yep.
Basically
So,
in
like,
their
for
frontal
example,
cortex.
you've got a brother, one of your brothers. I'm not going to name him by name, but one of your brothers, Callie, has got this, where he physically, because of the disability, can't develop the abstract thinking as he gets older. There are some people that have this roadblock in life where they can't abstract any further than say, oh, this is mac and cheese, eat, kind of thing. They can't go any further than that. There are some people that can't. I think
Like with Downs.
some. So there, and I think as as people age, it helps. That's one of the things that I like about getting older is that as we age, like Tyson was saying, we can collect different ideas through trial and error, and that takes a lot of time. That takes a lot of time to develop through trial and error. It takes time. So that's what I love about actually getting old. This is one of the things that I love about aging is that um, the abstractions become more structured as we get older. That's why one of the ways that we can tell that our crystalline intelligence is increasing while our fluid intelligence decreases as we get older. That's one of the ways that we're able to do it is because we have a lot more frames of reference as we age. Whereas some people with a disability, either physically or mentally, it's I think all like mental disabilities is a physical thing that happens to someone. It's actually a physical manifestation. So
I
there
guess
could,
we get first define what a disability is. I think it's a pretty general term, when in fact some things may be a different variation. It may not be neurotypical, but I don't know if you could necessarily describe it as a disability either. It may be a specialized advantage in a certain area versus a disability. I think like Alex is sort of referring to, say if you were your normal self and you were injured, God forbid, in a bad accident, and that was more of a physical injury, where this wouldn't be necessarily like a mental health, I guess, a physical neurological issue versus say like a mental health issue, or things that could fall under that umbrella.
right.
I
Say
have brain
like a
damage from
brain
lower
tumor would be different.
oxygen.
This is what Kevin has demonstrated. Since I've gotten to know Kevin, he's got disability in certain areas of his mental and physical state. However, he has literally like amplified other areas of his
Yeah,
ability.
I
Mhm.
So he,
cracked my head open in elementary school. I got staples in there, and I got a rock in there too, scratching up against parts of my brain.
but you were able to develop in areas quicker than the average person would say that didn't have that injury because you're able to amplify. You're like, dude, you're really good with technology. You got a
Yeah,
you got a savant as a result of that. So
because
like,
I had to stay in the house all the time. I wasn't allowed to play with kids all the time. I was literally raised on technology before it became popular.
yeah,
And that's a similar story arc to a lot of people who had similar medical things that, your similar situation. So, I guess people's ability just to recognize a pattern, like all those similar things where, they have
Yeah,
it,
I'm
it
really
kind of
good with
seems like,
patterns.
well, let's say, okay, I'm just kind of making a generalization here, but
Yeah,
from like knowing Alex and other people similar, there's tend to be certain types of things that are be drawn towards, say like trains, airplanes, anything to do with technology, they excel when it comes to very technical things. So you'll tend to find them in more of those roles where they can excel, like a computer programmer or anything to do with technology.
Yeah,
Because those
Raspberry
same things
Pi
that would
and
drive people crazy with frustration trying to go through, they thrive in that thing because it's ordered and structured. You know, that would be very different from someone who is
it's
trying to
also
walk.
increased my hand and eye coordination too
And I
from
think
playing so many video games with puzzles and that too.
so. When you can sort of take that general concept, when you have to understand how, say, like a
Hmm.
program works, all these different plugins and how everything is working together,
Yeah,
when you can sort
Photoshop plugins,
you
GIMP.
you develop a mental
Yeah,
framework that you can use to analyze things like social situations where before people could have been like so this is one of those things. So let's say someone with spectrum autism spectrum, they may not be able to social cues, things like that. It may be
well, I
difficult for
always
them.
used to sit in
Been
the corner during elementary and watch the kids play and watch their hand gestures and everything. I literally analyze every situation I was in.
So do you think that your pattern recognition ability would give you ability to sort of compensate for that, where you develop, oh, well, maybe it didn't come naturally, but I can see patterns very, very well when I know the things to look for, and then you develop that actual genuine confidence because you're just reading the patterns. And when you can
Yeah,
see
that's
things,
how I do. I read them really closely.
mhm.
and then you're able to act it
But
out.
they're also frameworks. They're not rigid
Yeah,
the same way that a precision caliper is. You have to sort of use the combination of all these things, and then well, I guess in a computer analogy, there would be like a weighted ratio to give certain things certain weights, and to give you
yeah.
a good working model to kind of understand.
I used to watch the Ben Heck show on YouTube. That's a very interesting about that. And now I got a soldering iron, so now I can finally desolder components and build my own at-home stuff. Become an electronical engineer, maybe. Who knows? Like my brother Robert, who works at Small Parts, designing parts with blueprints and that.
Hmm.
Runs in the family.
Okay, so next we're going to be talking about mental health and abstract
Hmm.
thinking. Some mental health conditions can negatively impact an individual's ability to think abstractly. For example, schizophrenia has been found to impair abstract thinking ability in those it affects. Some other conditions that may impair abstract thinking include autism, learning disabilities, dementia, traumatic brain injury. Some research has connected the ability to think abstractly with a stronger sense of self control. This means that when people were given a reason to do or not to do something, it was easier for them to adhere to that rule than if they were just simply told how to follow that rule.
Yep, gotta find our why.
Yep.
We've got to find the why.
Ooh, that struck a chord with me reading that last part. That was like me
Yep.
as a kid.
My dad had
Why?
dementia, so I
Tyson,
know
do
what
this.
that's
Why?
like living with
Yeah.
that all the time.
Tyson,
Because I
you
said
asked.
so. That's not good enough for me.
Not good enough. Right.
Yeah,
You asked.
I
A
always had to
million
remind my dad all the time, no matter what it was. Shopping, about old memories he used to tell me. I used to remind him of that all the time. Kept my brain always active.
That's why I think when you find that you're reminding somebody over and over and over and over and over and over and over again, where they're not really following it themselves, they don't know why. They don't have that structure as to like why the fuck am I following, pardon my French, but why am I following
Yeah,
this rule? That way they have to always be reminded from the external. Well, whenever I have somebody who's like that, who is um I have to remind to do something. I think more than 5 times, and yet it still hasn't become a habit for them. Solving the why, it becomes a habit. So the discipline becomes a habit if you can solve the why.
Yeah, you definitely
exactly.
see why. That's the purpose, and because when you will it, encounter adversity and things that make you question your goal. But if you have a strong enough why, that'll allow you to push past that to make it into a habit rather than something you just tried and then quit. If you can, I think it's like what 21 days or something like that, where you sort of cross that threshold and then you kind of establish a new routine.
All right. So I'm curious. So this has been shown to help people with disabilities like autism, dementia, traumatic brain injury, but finding the why helps even people with these conditions think abstractly more than they were previously able to because they found the why. Is that what you were saying, Callie?
Yeah.
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 I kind of got a question though, like when say it regards to schizophrenia or whatever. I mean, don't know that much about it, but just
I do have a little bit mixed in there. It's still hard to tell. Like I said, I'm still trying to understand my own brain.
I guess my question is, you say that people may hear things or think. How would you separate that from people that say would have a vision, where it's not like an audible hallucination, but a certain feeling, or others say maybe a psychic phenomenon, And here's a crazy thing.
Callie, you used
Sometimes.
to have this, so you might be able to best answer this one.
I don't have schizophrenia, but I do know that when somebody is having a vision versus hallucinating, there is a very clear way to tell the difference because I have had that vision stuff happen. So with hallucinations, you can literally see the person there. You can hear them talking into your ear, but they're not really there. When it comes to the visions, for me, it's like a deja vu feeling, but you know what's going to happen afterwards. So it's completely different.
I've had
Is there a
weird
certain level
deja
of
vus
self-awareness to
too.
that person, though?
Hang on.
So I want to drill down a little bit deeper. So that self-awareness, so that's a person that has schizophrenia that actually does see a person that's not like a vision, but you say it's like a physical manifestation. They see like a physical, like a person in the room there with them.
Yes.
So would they have characteristics like could they reach out and touch it? Would it be blocking light? Would it have like I would be asking these kind of questions to say like, okay, can I poke it with a stick? Like is this person, versus okay, let's say you have a hallucination that you're doing like say like mushrooms or something like that. You see it, but you're just tripping, and so you just kind of like ride it out like a roller coaster.
Right. You're able to tell, and you're able to also rationalize because you know that you're on the substance, and you know
Yeah.
it's gonna. Right.
Like, hold on, hope it don't fall off the ground.
Yeah.
Yeah, or fall off a building.
Well, if people think they can fly, hey, I welcome it. Here's a big grassy field. Spread your arms. Let's see what you got. Go for it. Run. Just go run.
Yeah.
Let's practice takeoffs first.
Okay, so now we're going to discuss abstract thinking exercises. So one way to exercise your abstract reasoning skills is to practice solving puzzles, optical illusions, and other brain teasers. These thinking exercises allow individuals to practice viewing information from different perspectives and angles, as they may help open a person's mind to different possibilities through the problem-solving process. Puzzles can be an engaging way for both young people and adults to get better at abstract thinking. Strengthening improvisation skills may also help increase an individual's creativity and their abstract thinking skills. Tasks that require the person to rely mostly on their imagination may help strengthen their ability to think abstractly over time.
Like Tetris. That actually
So-
increases brain.
I'd say probably animal training too.
Yeah,
Yep.
animal training, like with cats and dogs.
Because it would force you to understand, like, what is this thing, like, why isn't he listening? Well, he wants to listen, but, you're confusing him. So that forces you to sort of dial it back a notch and, work with them and try to get across your point to make, the animal understand what you want him to do.
And I think that reminds us of how we learn stuff.
repetition and structured reinforcement. I think it's the easiest way rather than trying to force people to remember. Allowing
Yeah,
them to fail and always being there to be reassuring and gently correct them, like, no, you're doing good, or like the Socratic method of asking questions to allow children to develop those skills and make connections on their own, like, well,
yep.
ice and water and steam, well, they're all the same thing.
Because ice evaporates and creates steam.
Right, and a lot of these things you learn as an early child, um, e- when it's snowing out, you have snow in your hand, and then it melts, and it's cold, and then it's wet.
Which turns it back into water.
Exactly. Or if you don't have good balance, then you fall over because then you learn about stability and how you
Hmm.
lock your knees.
Skiing.
Yep.
Skiing. Yeah,
So
I
now
learned a
just
lot of
gonna
ways to recognize how I learn things abstractly through the journey of when I learned how to ski. I've been reminded a lot of ways of how I learned stuff.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
so now we move to discussion.
Yeah.
All right. So I'm curious. Do we?
Hmm.
Because I wonder if we're able to recognize that kind of like epiphany moment where we realize that we can think abstractly even more than we used to. Like, can we see that growth in a way?
I would say yes. I
Yeah.
don't know if I
Yeah.
don't know if you guys ever had similar experiences, but I remember even like in school or like chemistry class or like physics class, I would like learn about something and
Oh, I love science.
it would feel like my brain like it just expanded. Like I almost did like a mental workout. Like whoa, like I learned like saying chemistry, like how something would blow up. I was like, dude,
Like
Huh.
this is like the
sodium metal
coolest
in
thing
water
ever.
sparks and blows up in water. Use a mineral oil on it also to keep it from going off suddenly when water's spilled on it.
Teddy bear in a test tube.
Yeah.
So
I,
yes, I do think there's a series of those moments. I think there's sort of things we see as a reflection that let us know that we're sort of on that path of, growth and self-discovery and all. Because we're always self-questioning, if we're doing the right thing or whatever. But I think as long as
Yeah,
we're asking the right
everything.
questions and
I remember my first time I actually um, saw the growth in my thinking and my ability to solve problems. I remember I had this like kids toy. It was like a leapfrog learning where we had to
Oh, yeah,
learn
I've
math.
used those.
Okay, I remember this is the first time I ever like felt even seen my growth where I knew I couldn't do it before for some reason, no matter how hard I tried to figure the math out. There was a certain point in my life where I couldn't do it, and I knew I couldn't do it. There was something physically that was missing, that was underdeveloped, that I couldn't do it at the time. I remember one night I was playing around with this thing, and finally it was like as if it unlocked from age, where I was finally able to solve my first math problem on that thing. And then that expanded into being able to solve other problems, including words, reading, writing. But I remember the first time I actually had that feeling, that epiphany, where I felt like, oh, finally, I can solve this.
that's how I felt when I first was able to solve a Rubik's cube.
Oh, I love Rubik's
it's the same.
cubes.
It's the same. It's the same circuit. Yeah,
Yep.
It's that same circuit. You realize how much
You
you've
get a
grown.
reward because it's I think I was reading somewhere that your brain releases dopamine when you learn a new fact. Like when you
Yeah.
learn new stuff, it's like your brain is like saying, yes, this is good, this is more information that we can use for our survival in some
You
way.
never stop learning,
It feels good.
no matter
Um,
what age that you are.
and that's when learning, like, okay, because I also have things that I have tried to learn, and it gets frustrating. It seems like no matter how it seems like the harder I try, then the worse it is. Like, what is that? Like when we're learning something to, and we're just
Because
not getting.
you're
Do you have a strong enough why?
Good point. Okay, that might be part of it.
Like, Alex, I was telling you that story when I built my first 3D printer, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I want to get one.
So the thing was, I had this vision, right? I mean, well, it wasn't necessarily mine, but I saw what the group of early adopters were doing. This was before the average person had ever heard of it. But I had already had a background in 3D modeling before this, so it was already right in line with what I was already doing. And I knew I immediately had to have one because this tool would immediately allow me to physically create the things I designed on my computer. I could literally take a design and in minutes have it making, and I saw the pictures of what other people had done, and at this point it was all homebrew stuff. People were just uploading their own code. It was all forums. There was really no
Open source
it's all open
software.
source. Yeah, it was a wild west, and people were making their own parts to help other people with their own 3D printers. This is called the RepRap project. So
You
it was the idea.
remember Make Magazine and the Maker Fair?
Yep, cupcake CNCs.
Yeah, I remember that
Yeah, the
video.
little wood laser cut. I remember all those. But the
Yep.
RepRap project
Ben
was
Heck
started
Never
Show
heard
as
of
used to
It's new to
watch it
me.
all.
I never heard of this one. Okay.
so basically my point is like when I heard about this, I had the why. I was like, it's gonna happen. I don't know how. Like I was almost like a stupid obsessed with it. Like
Okay.
a dog with a bone. Like
Creating different CAD
I,
I almost get that
profiles.
way with a puzzle or something I'm trying to solve. When I had these issues of building it, it's like starting this journey. I'm just gonna fucking go with the clothes on my back. Like it's gonna be crazy.
you
But
had a
I
strong
knew
why.
all the stuff I was gonna learn in the process, and I was right. And that's been almost 10 years ago by now, and I do 3D printing now more than ever. And I have all those experiences that I can look back now to sort of that accomplishment. Like I was there with the early guys, like learning about all the stuff, soldering my own components, doing all this stuff like that. And
Breadboards, all that.
You
you're
were
part of
among
that.
you
And
were
it's
among
something.
the pioneers. You were among the pioneers in that area. Yeah.
And every time that I had this problem that just pissed me off, like I got so mad at that thing. Like
Yeah,
it's
because it
that,
would
that overwork
string
where you
wrong
want to
or it
destroy it.
wouldn't heat correctly.
Yes. And it's sitting there silently mocking me because it's broken and it's not working. It's
Have to buy a new motor and all this.
Yes,
I-
well, but those moments that you're with yourself that you accomplish something or you learn a new skill that you push yourself beyond like expanded that
Yeah.
skill zone.
because I think what I wanted to get, because I recognize when I'm trying to learn something, but it's just not happening and it's frustrating. But I think you answered my question to that. It's about I should ask myself, do I have a strong enough why? And why am I doing this? And if the answer is no, then well, no wonder I'm not picking this up.
The pattern's not
So
clicking in my brain.
like when I skied when I was younger, like when I was like little, little me. He's
Hmm.
dead now. So, but I couldn't figure it out. I could not, for the life of me, figure out how the fudge other people are able to do this. It was like it was a mystery to me. But then it's like the why kind of died off quickly. I didn't have a strong enough why to learn how to ski at the time. So I kind of just let it go for years, and yet I still wondered. There was still something in the back of my mind that wondered how people are able to do this um, athletic pursuit. Um, because I was no athlete at that time. Like, man, I'm very different now. Like I said, that kid died. So he, now having been reignited, the why I wanted to learn how to ski was because of it happened again. Like it happened to me again. A couple seasons ago, I was taken up to a vacation spot with an old flame of mine, and it reignited as the why I wanted to compete in this area as an athletic pursuit. And the why was so much stronger because I just remembered it brought back all those years I've wondered, how do people do this? And it gave me a very strong why. One season, I'm already skiing parallel by the end of the season. Second season, I win the Special Olympics gold medal at Shush Mountain. So I had a very strong why that got reignited to learn how to ski. But for years, I guess you're right, Tyson. I did not have a strong enough why at the time, and it got. I tried to learn other things like rollerblading, skating. I couldn't do it.
You mentioned something about sort of metaphorically killing off your old former self or whatever,
Yeah,
and we talked about metaphors here in this discussion or whatever. A lot of these things are overarching concepts in film. We see it all the time. That scene I sent you from Fight Club, right?
yeah.
Oh,
It's
I've
a,
seen
it's
Fight
another
Club.
abstraction. It's another
It, it's the
abstraction that we're
it's
giving
the
a name.
uh, Raymond K. Essel, whatever his name was, and he sit there and he asks him, what did you want to be? He makes him think he's gonna die, and
Right.
then he gives him the second chance, but he was never gonna kill him, but he just wanted him to have that moment to realize like, it shocked his system enough to say, hey, I should do something and that now, the
Yeah.
one thing he can do right now, like if he has no choice but to find a way. And I think
The
putting
one
ourselves a little bit in that position, almost like burn the boats a little bit, like you're gonna do this because it's almost like a life or death
almost like the
thing.
live like you're dying song. That song really strikes a chord with me because I want to learn as much as I can as far as like live like I'm dying kind of thing, you know.
But killing that old self. So if we're to believe that movie, he indeed did wake up that morning and his breakfast tasted better, and he then
Yeah.
took all those actions and went down that path and had a life transformation experience. We would hope that in that fantasy universe or whatever, so his old self did die metaphorically, and he's now transformed, and he's now going to be an optimized version of himself,
Yep.
and
The
that
Animatrix.
and I'm thinking to myself, what would be the best version of that to me? Like when I lost my job or whatever. All these things in life. My family relationships or whatever. And unfortunately, we do live in a world that's controlled by money. So getting my finances in order has to be the number one. So the two things would be my fitness and finances, because my rationing is that if those two things are totally on point, I got nothing else to worry about. If I'm healthy and I have money, and I do want to do a lot of things with my technology, 3D printing, creating art. And now I feel like for the first time liberated enough to have the freedom to do those things, like creating 3D models and animations and creating videos. And
Blender.
Uh,
I've been using Blender, been using DaVinci Studio, combined with
Oh, I have
those.
DaVinci Resolve 16.
DaVinci, yeah, sorry, DaVinci Resolve. I have the free one too.
Speaking of, I want to mention this real quick because having the freedoms, it takes discipline. It takes discipline to unlock those freedoms for ourselves.
Yep.
Callie and Kevin, we did a previous podcast about the relationship between discipline and freedom.
Hmm.
So it takes certain discipline to unlock those freedoms to be able to solve more of these problems for ourselves and play the right games and make the right sacrifices and play the money game, play the fitness game. Yeah.
And we, because we have other things too. So I mean, for the time being, right now, that means I have to eliminate anything other. The more simplified I can have my life in terms of my diet, cooking, I can incorporate some of my other hobbies, such as being prepared, for situations, combining that with, say, my diet. I want to have food that's going to last for 25 years and also be nutritious. So I can, so
Yeah.
kill two birds with one stone.
And
Maybe
what's really
incorporate that
cool
into a
about
business where I could sort of possibly generate additional side income and suddenly be living life in a completely different way. I could do things like, Alex and I were sort of talking about this, strategy for living life, whether you're going to follow something, whether you're going to be the best, like work a corporate job for 20 years because that we think is the safe route to go, and people live lives of quiet desperation, always hoping something's going to happen, but they continually make the same you know decisions every day. As opposed to if you had a similar job, say paid similar future, you know, prospects or similar pay. Say you could be like work at a zoo, be a zookeeper or a horse trainer or working on an oil rig. You could just do a series of random jobs and live your life that whole way and just have
Right.
just crazy experiences.
Speaking of having a strong why, this is my answer. I have a pretty strong why as to why I want to continue doing the kind of the employee route when it comes to making money. I have a pretty strong why as to why that is. So, and it's something that motivates me to continue to do this. So, and well, I want to mention this too. What Tyson, what you're doing, what's really cool about this is that you're the one that's picking your sacrifices to do what you want to do. You're the one that's choosing it. It's not being chosen from an external circumstance for you. That sucks. If you have an external circumstance that's choosing this for you, what's really cool about you, Tyson, is that you're free from that. I think there's a lot of people that can't say the same. They're under guardianship or they're under certain circumstances where they can't make their own sacrifices willingly or even intellectually smart enough to make the right sacrifices in the first place to do what they want to do.
And I think the toughest thing for me is just having the personal accountability to say that I'm going to still try to get up and follow a certain routine, and it is very abstract trying to give form to all these different things I want to do, say with the video editing, different software, incorporating a drop shipping business, and I think when you're trying to do certain things and you don't have a framework, you get distracted and overwhelmed, and then you don't really take any action on anything because it's just like, okay, then you just keep.
You're multitasking in chaos then. There's no order, there's no aim.
Right.
I'm really good at multitasking.
Multi-switching is really all we can do.
Yeah.
We can't. We actually physically can't perform two tasks simultaneously on a conscious level. We can task switch and task stack.
Mm-hmm. And then there's the changing gears and then trying to get caught up to speed with what you're doing versus if you just say blotted out time increments. And I've done little things like that where you're saying for the next 20 minutes, I'm going to focus on nothing but this. And like I found that when I'm doing, say, like a video editing or doing something in Blender where,
source filmmaker.
The hardest part is forcing myself to get up and do it and at least just start it. If I can, I know if I can just start it and get past the first 15, 20 minutes, I'm going to find something that's going to sort of frustrate me just enough that's going to trigger that I have to figure it out because it's like taunting me. And then I'm like, okay, yeah, I learned how to do this little cool thing. So now this is a technique that I can learn now and then apply for in the future or incorporate in different ways. Or even if you mess something up and it forces you to start over, every single time I've had to do it, when I've had to restart,
I've had to.
And the second time I make it around, I make it twice as fast and usually even better. Because you're like, cool, and then you sort of just fly through it, and then you're always.
I think this is something that happens when a child gets held back a year from school. Well, usually they get past those few coming years. Ideally, and I don't know what the statistics are, but usually that year is it goes by very well. You know what I'm saying? Because they already know what's coming. I guess you could say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess it depends what kind of schooling. I think probably homeschooling would probably be the best for kids if they could like learn about like how caterpillars turn into butterflies and gardens and things like that would be more centered, and I think it would be better for mental health too. A lot of animals, can't go wrong there.
I taught myself all by myself just by tinkering with stuff.
Exactly. Taking things apart, figuring out how they work, and
I build computers.
I think that's the same thing you can do with abstract ideas. Take them apart and put them together again.
Exactly.
Abstract ideas.
Looking at it from every possible angle, like another good concept. I talk to Alex all the time about electricity. That's like a huge passion, like Nikola Tesla. Think about a magnet.
Yeah.
We all know a magnet. We have probably 5 of them on our fridge right now. The same thing, trying to understand what's really happening. And we have different ways to model what's happening. You know, the iron filings. I have another specialty tool that can actually allow you to visually see the magnetic field lines. But
Is that the sphere thing that you got?
yep, exactly. The sphere thing, it lights it up, and you can see because the field lines are like a torus, or almost like a piece of fruit.
It
And
looks,
all the
yeah.
secret, all the secrets in the universe are already right there. How our bodies are formed with every atom and every molecule. It's all linking magnetic fields and exchanging electrons. Even chemistry is still electricity because it's exchanging those electron shells, forming new compounds. You know, yeah, and
Yeah.
just thinking about the nature of our reality, and even on the spiritual level too, that we have our spiritual selves, and just being calm and centered, and trying to just be in
Taking the
taking
abstractions
taking
and
more control of our own thoughts instead of kind of letting our thoughts control us.
yep. So Callie,
Well, yeah.
what were we gonna say?
Go ahead, Alex.
Okay, okay. Um, so okay, so Callie, what was the next thing that we were gonna do after this one? What was it again?
We are going to do the clash between personality and disability.
That's right, that's right. We're gonna revisit that one. So that, but I think that in and of itself is an abstract, and it's an abstraction that we can give a name. So we're giving a name to. So the idea of the clash between what is disabling us and our personalities and how we overcome the disabilities that is limiting us and optimizing ourselves to be the best version of ourselves. Like Stephen Hawking. Stephen Hawking. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he's done. He's mastered his craft, even though he's in a wheelchair and can't physically, but optimize himself. So
And
that he probably had a major clash when he was physically, deteriorating, but he probably had a major clash with his personality, with his disability that made him who he is, who he was.
I think
Well,
there's another category too that sort of is like maybe a third category, and that's maybe virtue, um, courage. These kind of values too, because even when you say neurotypical, I I don't know if anyone would actually qualify as neurotypical. Like
Sure.
like and
Okay.
frankly, those people, like, and even if they're saying, well, and I frankly am kind of hesitant in questioning a lot of certain psychological things, but even neurotypical people, just like the Stanley Milgram experiment, demonstrated almost scarily how far people are willing to go because someone in authority told them to do it. You know,
Yep.
they could
So
essentially be turned into monsters. These were neurotypical people because there's something in our programming that responded to this authority that's primal, that goes back thousands of years, saying do this, or like
why do you think I'm not getting the vaccine? Yes, I'm announcing this on this podcast.
exactly, me neither. and
I'm
and
not.
frankly, I go so far to say, like, I want you to try to force me. Let's see what happens.
I have a very rare blood disorder.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and let's play this out. Let's use some abstract thinking, shall we? Okay. Let's see how is this going to play out. Look, let's think of a few things. Among the four of us here today, who here has taken a international flight in the last year, or
Not
let's say
me.
the last 3 years?
Nope.
Not me.
Not me. Okay. So are you going to use that as the carrot to give me back my freedoms? To say, okay, so I can't travel overseas to the UK, which is a complete disaster right now anyway. I
Hmm.
could. What is the alternative? Rent an RV and explore this beautiful, great country and all the wonderful things. And I can almost guarantee you, the people I'm going to find along the way in the path of that journey, who will never take that thing. They're probably going to be the cool, fun people to hang out with. I bet we will have a blast. And all the
Hmm.
people that would say, "We got our cards. Look at how good we are." Those people I would never want to associate with anyway. It's almost kind of like the Thoreau, whoever club would have me as a member, I would never want to be a part of. It's going to be those fun outlaws out in the woods with their dirt bikes, and doing mud bogging,
Yep.
like,
Yep.
and so this whole thing of these people, and this is whole against the neurotypical, and it's just shitty character, like narcissism. I mean, like, how do you really define that? But it's everywhere. You see it, this posturing of look at us, this
Yeah.
thing. Whereas, like, I don't give a shit about you and your little thing that you're gonna try to do because you have these control fetishes. I think it's funny and I mock it relentlessly. But I'm really scared about the people. I'm scared. This is like the Stanley Milgram thing. The people that assume, well, it's more like the Stanford prison experiment. Suddenly, all these cashiers and these people that never had any, like a nurse, suddenly became like these prison wards. Like, yes, we do what we say, and like it was like they were hooked instantly, like a kid smoking cigarettes, just chain smoking. Like, more orders, more TikTok videos, dance, dance, dance. Stay home, lose your job.
Well,
Yeah.
conclude this podcast.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, love yourself, be yourself, take care of yourself. This is a day to be me. Go ahead, like, subscribe, and comment.
Don't forget to check out our website, www.adaytobeme.com. There it is.